This week in Pure Reinvention.
What drives me in the lip bar and keeps the momentum going is like my belief that I can change people's perceptions about beauty. It's not about the product at all.
Episode 150, Melissa Butler, founder and CEO of The Lip Bar.
Engage, disrupt, adapt, repeat. You're listening to Pure Reinvention, the podcast for curious people.
Welcome to this episode of Pure Reinvention, where we create space for the unexpected by inspiring a reinvention lifestyle. Jody, Melissa Butler is quickly making our highlight reel.
I love this girl. We got the chance to meet, you had because you recorded the podcast, you and Will, but I got the chance to meet Melissa for the first time this week. I forgot
that was your first time.
Oh my goodness.
That makes a jaw dropper, isn't she?
She is this tiny little person. It's like orange juice concentrate. It's all this amazing, amazing stuff just squeezed into this tiny little package. And she has so much personality and life and passion, and it just flows from every inch of her. Even the gentlemen in our group who know nothing about lipstick and might be completely uncomfortable with the topic of cosmetics or anything beauty related were all in when Melissa was talking.
And when we asked Melissa what the real purpose of her work was?
Yeah, not the product.
No.
She's real quick to say it is not about the product. I wasn't even really that interested in beauty products, because I'm a product junkie, but I wasn't buying the latest, greatest for her. It was about redefining women's definition of beauty and making all women feel beautiful wherever they're at, whether they choose to use her product or not. Not saying you need my product to be beautiful, but you are already beautiful. If you want to use this to give yourself a little pop, that's great, and it's great for you. It's vegan and it's organic and it's all these buzzwords, but the real purpose had nothing to do with the product itself.
This is a woman who came back to her hometown of Detroit, had a very successful career on Wall Street, and came back to her hometown of Detroit to start a company and make a difference. Let's listen to her story.
This week's episode is sponsored by HRM Services, providing solutions that work. HRMS provides customized human resource consulting services to fit the unique needs of their clients. Every client has a story, and they make it their business to learn yours. Contact HRM Services today at 517-974-8033 or visit their website at hrmservices.biz.
We're here in Pony Ride, and we've had a chance to interview some really creative and successful people for our podcast, but no one more successful or creative than the current podcast guest, Melissa Butler, founder of The Lip Bar. Melissa was a resident of Pony Ride and has now moved into her own retail space. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And has a wonderful story to share with our podcast listeners about her journey through this growth phase and, of course, what's next, right?
Yeah.
In fact, when I first met Melissa, she was in the middle of doing a bunch of YouTube videos, which began to highlight for us the robustness of thought you had, recognizing that podcasts and YouTubes were the way in which the marketplace is responding to messaging. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Mm-hmm. I believe you said you are a local girl from the east side of Detroit.
I am. Yeah, so I grew up near the city airport, and I have entrepreneurs in my family. So I didn't necessarily have the best upbringing, but I was always exposed to a variety of things. So one of my favorite cousins, he's a serial entrepreneur. I didn't know what a serial entrepreneur was at the time. I just knew that he always had some really cool idea that he was actively working on. It wasn't just an idea. It was something that, was tangible. And so I admired that. So I grew up, working in the mall at his stores. And his mother, I watched her own her own business. So I always was exposed to small business owners. And so I kind of romanticized the idea of having my own and owning my own. But then I went to college, and, when you go to college, oftentimes your fantasy then changes to the American dream. So I went to college. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get a job. I'm gonna get married. I'm gonna buy a house, the true American dream.
What everybody else does.
Exactly. So I studied business finance, not because I love finance, but just because I wanted to make money. So that was my goal. Again, I didn't come from the best neighborhood. So I'm like, okay, I just don't want to be in the situation where I found myself when I grew up. So how do I prevent that? And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to work on Wall Street. So I'm thinking of Wolf of Wall Street. I'm thinking about the really exciting movies where you see them answering the phones on the trading desk. And I'm like, that's going to be me. This is going to be great. Except I graduated in 2008, which was the crash, the optimal point of the crash. So I went and I started working for Barclays, who bought Lehman Brothers. Mm-hmm. So I was in the thick of it, and the corporate culture was horrible. No one liked
Wasn't
their
what
job.
you expected at all.
Yeah, no. I thought it was going to be this very exciting, fun thing, and I just realized that it was something mundane that wasn't actually allowing me to grow. And so I found myself on Wall Street doing busy work. Making good money doing busy work, but completely unsatisfied, completely unfulfilled. And so I'm looking at my coworkers, and they hate their jobs. And I was like, well, I don't want this to be me. So I have to decide to do something else. So it's the idea of, you don't like your situation, change it. So I couldn't really think of what I wanted to do because I wasn't really passionate about makeup. I'm still not passionate about makeup. I tell people this all the time. What drives me in the lip bar and keeps the momentum going is my belief that I can change people's perceptions about beauty. It's not about the product at all. But at the time, I'm like, okay, well, what am I good at? What do I like? What are my interests? I'm like, well, I love shoes, but it's not enough to start a business because you love something. And I realized I couldn't draw. And I'm like, well, maybe I can't be a shoe designer. And I ended up arriving in the beauty and the cosmetic atmosphere because I realized that I was such a product junkie. And also at the same time, I was taking a more holistic approach to my lifestyle. So I stopped eating chicken. I stopped eating turkey. I started reading everything, the products that I was using, the foods that I was eating. And when it came to makeup, food and body care, it was easy to replace with natural things. Super easy. You can go to Whole Foods, find good stuff. And you could even go to Whole Foods and find makeup, but it was sucky. It was those
you gave up quality for whatever you were looking for.
Absolutely. So it was those taglines that you see where it's not your mom's jeans or not your mom's fill in the blank. And so that's what I was looking for, not my mom's makeup kind of thing, but something that was still going to be natural, organic, vegan. I couldn't really find that in the beauty industry. And so I started making lipstick in my kitchen. So that's how this whole business started. I started living in New York, working on Wall Street.
So you actually were on Wall Street in Manhattan.
4 years. I did that for 4 years of my life. Since then I've erased it. I don't have any memories from it.
Yeah, is that good?
You have that selective memory where I just decided, I don't want to think about that.
But it was not just you were literally in the middle of Wall Street. Okay. That's an important distinction, is you weren't somewhere kind of pretending to do.
No, I was living in New York. I lived in New York for 6 years immediately after college. And I was working on Wall Street at the height of the crash. Basically watching the entire industry fall apart. The SEC is implementing new rules. No one really knows how to play by these rules. Yeah. Options are going crazy. And it's
it's a very chaotic time.
Yeah. And I'm this kid who was just kind of happy to have a job. And then I get there and I'm like, wait, what's happening?
So that's what, and I didn't mean to regress, but I think it's an important distinction to know that it was not just kind of doing Wall Street type work. It was embedded in living, right? Going to work every day on Wall Street in Manhattan, New York. That's
in Lehman Brothers' old headquarters.
Yeah, and there's a pace there and a lifestyle there that you were experiencing that then kind of drove you to the realization that there was something more than what you wanted. So go back to now your entrepreneurial investment in product, because I want to hear about the product, but then I want to go to the next thing.
Yeah, so I started making the lipstick in my kitchen, and I funded this fully from my ability to work on Wall Street. So I'm grateful for that time of my life, because without it, I couldn't have started the Lip Bar. It is a very capital intensive business to be in, and so you kind of have to pick your battles. Like, if you want to start a business, you have to figure out, like, what is the lowest barrier to entry? How can I get in it and be successful with the bare minimum? And luckily for me, I was in a position to actually fund my dreams at that time. So I used Wall Street as a tool to fund my passion project.
Which means you're self-capitalized.
Yeah, absolutely. And we still don't have any investors to this day. We ended up going on Shark Tank, and we didn't get a deal, but we got so much exposure. And since then, we haven't even really tried to get investors. And now that may change a little bit, but it really gave me the opportunity to understand where I was in my business and how I wanted my business to grow. But that's getting a little further ahead. So I'm in New York, I'm working on Wall Street, and I'm literally working 55 hours for this company, and then going home and working an additional 6 hours on my dream. And sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to sacrifice. You have to understand that there's going to be a give-take situation if you really want it to work. And when I eventually quit my job, it wasn't because the Lip Bar was making so much money, but I could see the growth, I could see the potential, and I just decided, if I want my business to give me 100%, I have to give it 100%. People always ask, like, well, when do you know when to quit? Or, did you save up a certain amount of money? And I don't think that there's a real fair metric to actually determine that. I think you just kind of know. You know, and you have to be willing to take the risk. So at that time, I'm young. I don't have any kids. I'm not married. So if I fail right now, I fail.
For anyone that wants to be successful like you, what's the number one bit of advice that you would give that individual?
For someone looking to start a business, I would tell them to not rush it. So people have ideas, and you get really excited about ideas. And the reality is, and this is going to sound harsh, but no one is waiting on your product. No one needs your product until it's actually ready. So when people are starting businesses, they actually make up all these fake deadlines that don't mean a thing. And it's like, no, we have to launch on this date. No, you don't. Why? You have to launch when you're ready. I want you to actually do the research, take the time, look at your competition. Don't study them, but see what's happening in the market. Check out the market trends and understand that no one is waiting on your business. And so when you know that no one is waiting on your business, you are going to feel that much more empowered to launch with something that is electric, something that when it comes out, people are going to feel like, oh, wait, this is what I needed that I never thought that I needed. Or this is something that means so much to me, that's why I'm going to support it. No matter if it's a nonprofit or a consumer good. But you want to actually make sure that you're actually ready to start that business, and that you're doing it in the way that's done right the first time. And I mean, you're going to make mistakes, but at the end of the day, you really do only have one first impression. So what is your impression going to be? Is it going to be lasting? Is it going to be impactful? Not if you rush it.
So, Mike, I got to tell you, there are so many things that when I listen to Melissa, I take away. A couple key things that I want to make sure we hit on in this conversation. But the first, and she didn't come out and necessarily make this connection, but when she started her professional journey, she said, I went to school, I got a degree in finance, not because I liked finance, but because I thought finance would make me a lot of money.
Right.
And I wanted the American dream. And she defined the American dream as tangible things that you could see.
Money,
so it
cars,
was the house, it was the marriage, it was the kids, it was the money.
Yep.
What I really love about Melissa's story is that she had that. I mean, she had a job, she had the money, she was living in the heart of Manhattan.
It was right
and
there.
realized that it didn't really matter what she had. You know, those boxes she had lined up that defined American dream for her when she started, I think are very different than how she would define the American dream today. And what I hear her saying now is it's not about what I have, it's about how I feel, and it's about the difference I make because of what I do.
So at a relatively young age, Melissa was able to kind of reconnect to herself and break away from the paradigm that she had watched us as a society kind of say, this is what success is. And she took a step back. She came home and she took a deep breath and she dived into the entrepreneurial world and developing products, but the products really fit into the bigger story.
And isn't it interesting that she made a shift from what society defined as the American dream, her perception of that definition, to what she really wanted, which is, I want to feel a certain way and I want my work to have a certain impact. And you can see that same parallel in why she chose beauty products. Because she said so much of what I saw in the marketplace was you have to use this product to meet some standard artificial definition of beauty.
Yes.
And it's not about the outside. It's not about the packaging. It's about how you feel about yourself that makes you beautiful. And I feel like those two things just so beautifully tie together.
They do, because this is a person that by her own admission is a product junkie.
Yeah.
She was buying lots of product, chasing that dream. And then when she finally kind of picked her head up and looked around and said, wait a minute, none of these things really, truly define how I feel about being beautiful. And all of a sudden, this whole new journey started. And so it isn't because she wasn't aware of the products. She was a product junkie. It was because maybe she had overdosed on those products.
Yeah, but not beauty products so much. It was like shoes. It was any kind of product. You know, she liked to try it out. But because of how it made her feel. Another key point that I want to make sure we have just a moment to touch on here is the advice that she gives to other entrepreneurs. She says, you know, because I think you asked her that question just at the very end there, and I loved her comment, because as an entrepreneur myself, I struggle with this. It's the infliction of arbitrary deadlines. And she said, you know, when you're coming to market for the first time and no one knows you and no one knows your product, no one is sitting around waiting for you to launch. They are carrying on life regardless of whether or not your product or your service is in front of them. They are living their life and they don't know that they're going without. So if this launch date is November, who says it's got to be ready by November? You know, you should launch when you are ready to launch so that you make the biggest impact you can possibly make. Not pushing yourself or holding yourself to these deadlines that have no real meaning tied to them. And I just felt like that concept gives so much freedom and it removes this sense of obligation. I mean, many of us become entrepreneurs because we want a sense of freedom and autonomy and space for what we want to do when we want to do it and how we want to do it. And yet we go right back into this old paradigm that we've been conditioned to do, which is set a goal, set a deadline, set benchmarks, work towards it, and that somehow if you don't meet those, you're a failure. And it's just the complete opposite reason of why we ever decided to go down this path in the first place. And when she said that, I was like, amen.
Yes.
Amen.
This is a great time to just throw in. This is where reinvention leaders can truly make a difference. Reinvention leaders are actually reinventing the way we think about deadlines and goals and product launches, right? Instead of setting arbitrary dates to hit a deadline, we're starting to understand that reinvention leaders have to set those dates to have a successful launch. And we have so many examples of when we set an arbitrary false deadline and push ourselves to something and we do it when we're not ready, we have a failure and not a successful launch. And I think Melissa has very succinctly communicated how important it is that we launch when we're ready to have a successful launch, not a targeted arbitrary date that may or may not be successful. The other thing that I think bears a second Yahoo from me that you had mentioned in your first comment, and that is reinvention leaders have to tie whatever they're doing to the bigger story. So Melissa's products tie to the bigger story. The reinvention leader has to have the ability to tie their message to the bigger story. Melissa brought both of those concepts strongly home. I think there's strong takeaways, and I really thank you for picking up on those because they are absolutely at the core of what reinvention leadership
Yeah, it's
should
people
be.
like Melissa that keep us inspired and keep us going. So hopefully you all got as much out of this as we did. She's even better in person. So if you want to meet Melissa, maybe sign up for one of those events that's coming up in 2018. We've got some starters courses, some We Invent that's going to be happening. And I'm sure Melissa will be featured on at least one.
If you're ready for a change, make it a change that lasts. Make it Pure Reinvention.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pure Reinvention. Keep the conversation going and get alerts when new podcasts are up by following us on Twitter at Pure Reinvention or sign up for our mailing list at purereinvention.com.